body and grinding down the
We'll start with this per tweet from Michael Benson. Eddie Hearn has confirmed that the USYK versus Anthony Joshua rematch is not included in AJ's DAZN UK broadcast deal. The Saudis own the global TV rights for USYK versus AJ 2 and are now in negotiations with broadcasters. One would imagine that at least one of those broadcasters they're negotiating with is DAZN, but perhaps Sky Sports as well, maybe BT. Who knows? Everybody thought when AJ made that big announcement that Joshua versus USYK II would be on DAZN. Didn't make a lot of sense making that announcement when they did. The real value of that deal doesn't even take effect until after the USYK rematch. We don't know if he's going to win that fight. Doesn't seem like a great situation for DAZN as a platform. Still a good situation for Matchroom as a promotional outfit because it is still their show after all. But it's not a great situation for DAZN. What if the Saudis sell the rights to the fight to Sky or one of DAZN's competitors? Twitter account that goes by the name I'm Z said it best. So DAZN is throwing the bag at AJ, but they aren't even guaranteed this fight. And if he loses, they are paying millions to a boxer with losing interest for the rest of his career. They don't even get this rematch, which could possibly be one of his only remaining big fights. What are you supposed to say? This really is one of the biggest fights of the year, if not the biggest fight of the year globally. This is a fight that is sure to get worldwide attention, worldwide revenue, and it seems like DAZN may not be the beneficiary of that. They may not be the beneficiary of that worldwide attention and revenue. Kind of a raw deal. So what are you making all these promises to this guy for? Making all these promises to this guy and you can't even get this fight. Don't misunderstand the situation. Matchroom surely benefits from what's going on here. So does Anthony Joshua. Fiscally, at least, it seems like the Saudis want to auction off the fight to the highest bidder. That might be DAZN as a broadcaster. That might be someone else. That might be Sky. Sky, who were visibly disappointed, at least Adam Smith was, when news broke that Anthony Joshua would be going all in with DAZN. That news was misleading. It led a lot of people to believe that Joshua versus USYK II would be shown by way of DAZN. Though if the Saudis have the global rights to the fight, who are the rights to the fight going to end up with, and how are consumers, customers, how are they going to be able to watch it? A lot of variables in a situation like that. What about here in the United States? You're a boxing fan, you're here in the United States, you want to see the fight. Well, where the hell do you watch it? DAZN has been advertising the fight by way of their social media, obviously, but if they're not the platform that's going to show it, what, is it going to end up on ESPN? That's a genuine possibility. The Saudis may be auctioning off the fight to the highest bidder in different territories. I don't know. Maybe Sky Sports gets the rights to the fight in the UK, ESPN Plus, maybe they get the rights to the fight in America, or maybe DAZN does. Which is a lofty situation for Matchroom because they get optimal value for their show. It's a lofty situation for the Saudis auctioning off these rights, lofty situation for the fighters getting optimal exposure by way of varying platforms, if that's the way this cookie crumbles. It's a lofty situation for some, in some ways, not so lofty for DAZN in others. That's if they don't get the rights for this fight, because I do imagine... Yeah, I imagine DAZN's in the running to show the fight, though it's not a guarantee that they get it. That announcement Anthony Joshua made a couple of days ago seems stupid and pointless now. What's the point in announcing that you're going all in with DAZN for a deal that doesn't go into effect until after this fight? This is the fight that everybody's waiting for. This is the big one. This deal isn't even relevant until this is over. Looks like when they ironed out the terms of this deal and accepted Saudi Arabia as the location for the fight, it's essentially a deal that greatly benefits the fighters as they both stand to make a fuck ton of money from this thing. It's a great deal for the fighters, great deal for the promotional outfit, but not a great deal for their broadcast partner. The rights to this thing end up someplace other than DAZN. I don't imagine DAZN and Joe Markowski are going to be happy about it.
Tyson says that he doesn't want to box me, fight me, because I'm not of his level. That's because he's afraid of me.
He wants 500 million.
Він хоче 500 мільйонів.
Він шуткує.
He's probably kidding.
500 лямів? Хто йому дасть 500 лямів?
500 million. Who would give him 500 million?
Я теж хочу 500 мільйонів, і що?
I also want 500 million, and what?
That is Alexander Usyk's reaction to some of Tyson Fury's recent comments as to what it would take to get him out of retirement, what it might take to get him in the ring with Alexander Usyk. It's an expected reaction because it's a ridiculous thing to say, and Tyson Fury's no stranger to saying ridiculous things.
Bet he's got a big cock and all. Probably I wish I had it, but who cares?
He just shoots off at the mouth and says whatever stupid thing comes to his mind, whatever passing thought there is in passing. Some people find it charming and whimsical, and other people are running out of patience. Why can they never just get a straight answer from this guy?
He is still a reigning champion. He is still in possession of the WBC title.
That claims to be retired. And Alexander Usyk's reaction to this is that Tyson Fury says he doesn't want to box me because I'm not on his level. That's because he's afraid of me.
There are a growing number of people that opt for that school of thought.
Seems that the terms and conditions of Tyson Fury's potential ring return are conditional, as are all things with Tyson Fury. You can never get a straight answer out of this guy.
People are losing their stomach for his antics.
Fury's trademark candor, Tyson Fury, who said, Alexander Usyk's only just come into this generation one fight ago, so you can't put him in it. He's a middleweight blown up. He can't compare. Been a heavyweight 2 years. When you've been a heavyweight 10, 15 years, come back and we'll talk.
What the fuck does that even mean?
He's literally calling Alexander Usyk a blown-up middleweight because when Alexander Usyk was young, he was in the amateurs, he campaigned as a middleweight for a while. Well, here as a grown man, he's clearly not a middleweight, so I mean...
What the fuck does that even mean?
What the fuck are you talking about? Are you gonna fight this guy or not? And if you're not gonna fight this guy, why don't you just relinquish the WBC title and let somebody else fight for it? Somebody who might be interested in becoming an undisputed champion, carving out a legacy of your own. Because so long as you claim to be retired and you're hanging on to that belt, you're holding up the division.
Nobody gets to fight for the WBC. Nobody gets to become an undisputed champion.
Stupid comments aside, the most headlines that Tyson Fury's making these days when he's not doubling down on his retirement claims, he's barred from entering into the United States. Not that it's relevant to this conversation, because I don't think a Fury versus Usyk fight would take place on American soil. I imagine a fight like that might happen abroad.
Reality, we won't know what's gonna happen until it happens.
That's the truth. Though, we can guess. At least I can. If Alexander Usyk beats Anthony Joshua for a second time, hangs on to all those alphabet titles, and Tyson Fury doesn't come out of retirement to unify titles with him, if he doesn't come out of retirement to face Usyk, a lot of people are going to feel...
With you always getting out of fights with retirement claims.
You swerved Klitschko rematch with retirement claims, your personal issues, your personal problems and substance abuse, whatever you had going on. I don't know when it became...
Everybody's throwing pity parties these days.
I'm gonna level with you. I don't really give a shit what Tyson Fury's personal problems are. The extent of my interest in Tyson Fury is as a pugilist, a prize fighter, a boxer, and you skipped out on a rematch that you owed Vladimir Klitschko because of your own personal fucking issues that I don't care about.
I'm not gonna pretend I care. I don't.
Any other profession in the world, when your personal issues catch up to you and hinder your ability to perform, your ability to do a job, it reflects poorly on you because you're supposed to keep that stuff in check. That's what you're supposed to do. This more recent stint of retirement doesn't have much to do with personal issues. You're just choosing to walk away now.
Gonna bring up the mental health stuff again?
If he wants to retire, do exhibition crossover fights with the likes of Francis Ngannou, more power to him so long as he vacates the WBC title, because what the boxing fans want to see is an undisputed champion, with or without Tyson Fury. So if you don't want to come back and you want to do other things, vacate the title.
Go on, get the fuck out of here.
Who needs you? Stay gone. Alexander Usyk feels that Tyson Fury is avoiding him only because Tyson Fury has given him enough reason to believe that.
Conveniently retires when he's just one fight away from becoming an undisputed champion.
What are you supposed to say? In other news, per tweet from Michael Benson, Gennady Golovkin on his criticism of Canelo Alvarez in 2018, he says, "I stand by my words. He is the one who tested positive for clenbuterol, and he is the one trying to come up with some excuses, trying to blame other people. That behavior is, I would say, like clownish behavior." And, in 2018, when all of that first happened, when all of that first took place, Canelo Alvarez testing positive for a banned substance between his first fight with Gennady and his second fight with Gennady.
If Golovkin really wanted to stand on principle, he could have absolved himself of the whole thing.
Washed his hands of the whole goddamn jackpot. He could have left Canelo Alvarez high and dry at that point.
Yeah.
In that moment, between those two fights when public opinion of Canelo Alvarez was at an all-time low.
Yeah.
People thought that he really beat Canelo Alvarez, that it wasn't really a draw, that Canelo Alvarez was a cheater.
If he would have told Canelo, go fuck yourself and fuck a second fight, fuck a rematch, because everybody knows I beat you.
If he would have stood on principle then, his criticisms and critiques of Canelo Alvarez would mean a lot more now. The reason they don't is because regardless of what happened with Canelo Alvarez and that banned substance, regardless of all of that, you chose to fight him for a second time, knowing how the first fight was scored, feeling like you were robbed,
Yeah.
knowing that he tested positive for a banned substance. It created an environment to where, okay,
All right, you know what the deal is.
you accept a second fight. You walk into the ring against this guy for the second time. When you make your bed, you got to lie in it.
Because you made that decision.
It's kind of like how when Deontay Wilder accused Tyson Fury of cheating, having metal objects concealed inside of his gloves. It's kind of like how when he did that between the second fight and the third fight.
If you think the guy cheated, why would you walk in there with him for a third time?
You think that this was all part of some nefarious scheme by way of Tyson Fury and the powers that be to split you from the WBC title. If you think they were all working against you, why would you return to the scene of the crime? Why would you hold the third fight in the same location you held the second fight in?
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Just another case of a guy who made his bed and he's got to lie in it. You made a decision and you paid the price. You suffered the consequences. The glaring difference between those two fights, however, is that it was never actually proven that Tyson Fury had any foreign objects concealed inside of his gloves, whereas Canelo Alvarez,
He did test positive for a banned substance. It is a stain on his legacy.
where it becomes chippy is that in spite of this, Gennady Golovkin chose to fight him for a second time.
You felt you got robbed in the first fight, and you saw in between the first fight and the second fight, this guy tested positive for a banned substance.
Canelo Alvarez needed redemption. Redemption for the bad decision in the first fight. Redemption for the banned substances found in his system between the first fight and the second fight. And Gennady Golovkin, unwittingly, I guess, gave him a chance at redemption, gave him a shot.
Don't complain about it now when you decided you'd fight him anyway in spite of all of this.
You made your bed, and you have to lie in it. These talking points, these old wounds, they're resurfacing now ahead of Canelo and Gennady Golovkin's third fight. Gennady Golovkin, who was asked about Canelo Alvarez not being happy with his previous comments. Gennady, who says, maybe it's because I'm not a member of the Pajama Club. That's why they are upset with me.
It's a little bit more humor than we're used to from Gennady Golovkin.
Got a pretty good idea what Gennady thinks about Canelo Alvarez, but what does he think about Eddie Hearn? Because he's also a part of that Pajama Club.
He's fast become Canelo Alvarez's biggest fan.
Some might call it a conflict of interest. I call it predictable. Because any promoter worth his weight in salt would do exactly what Eddie Hearn is doing.
That the top draw in the United States might be the top priority?
Top priority to Eddie Hearn. Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't he? What do you expect?
So any promoter, every promoter would treat the situation.
These are just my thoughts on all of this. I felt, and still feel, that Gennady Golovkin won that first fight with Canelo Alvarez. I feel that the decision...
Canelo Alvarez needed that rematch more than Gennady did.
The clenbuterol scandal just made it worse. It made it 10 times worse. Public opinion of Canelo Alvarez was at an all-time low at that point. At that point, I felt that Gennady Golovkin's got him by the balls. He can give him a rematch. He cannot give him a rematch, since most people felt that Gennady Golovkin won the first fight anyway, in spite of the judges ruling it a draw. It was Gennady who had the upper hand.
He was still an unbeaten fighter, still an unbeaten champion.
Was still just one fight away from achieving his goal of becoming that division's undisputed champion, a goal that we now know was a hoax.
Yeah.
It wasn't ever about all the belts.
Between the first fight and the second fight, he had the option of unifying titles with Billy Joe Saunders.
The fight with Canelo Alvarez was more important. That's how it played out. That's what happened. He had the option of achieving that dream and achieving that goal. He chose the bag instead.
Billy was calling him out. Billy said he was ready to unify.
The rematch with Canelo Alvarez was more important to Gennady Golovkin. The rematch with Canelo Alvarez was so important to Gennady, he actually vacated the red belt.
No, wait a minute. I thought you wanted to become an undisputed champion.
Go back in time to that time between the first Canelo Alvarez fight and the second one, where Gennady Golovkin was insistent on fighting Vanez Martirosyan for some reason. Vanez Martirosyan, a junior middleweight who was inactive for some time at the time and was coming right off a loss. Yet Gennady Golovkin was insistent on fighting this guy, this particular opponent. At that time, the IBF was against this, and they warned Gennady, if you fight this guy, we're going to strip you. We are not going to sanction this fight.
Why the hell did Gennady want to fight that guy so bad?
He wanted a takeover fight, an easy one, between the first fight with Canelo and the second fight with Canelo. He was preserving himself for the second fight. That's why.
That's the only reason he was so hell-bent on fighting that guy. Preserving himself.
Wants to fight that guy, but the IBF refuses to sanction it. They warn Gennady, you fight this guy, we're going to strip you. After some time, they reach a deal. They'll let him fight Vanez Martirosyan without stripping him of the IBF title, so long as he takes care of his mandatory challenger afterwards, Sergey Derevyanchenko.
That was the deal.
And instead of fighting Sergey in defense of that red belt, defense of the IBF title, the agreement he had with the IBF, he vacates the title, ends up fighting Canelo Alvarez for a second time instead, and the rest, as they say, is history. It became crystal clear at that point, at least for me.
Whatever happened in the first fight and in between the first fight and the second fight, it can't bother you that much.
The judge's decision to rule it a draw, the clenbuterol found in Canelo Alvarez's system, you're not hung up on that stuff. You're more focused on the payday. You're more focused on the price. That's why you're coming back. 4 seconds.
You made your bet, now you have to lie in it. I don't feel sorry for you.
Don't forget that it was really Canelo that needed that rematch. He needed another shot, a shot at redemption. He needed to prove in the second fight that he can be the same guy.
He needed to prove that he's on the level and he's clean.
Having tested positive for a banned substance was a stain on his legacy, and he was under close scrutiny at that time, and he needed to prove in a second fight.
Canelo Alvarez was the one with something to prove, not Gennady. Canelo Alvarez was the one who needed redemption.
He got it. Canelo Alvarez spent a lot of time on his back foot in that first fight, so much so it looked a lot like he got outworked by Gennady Golovkin, whereas in the second fight, he took the fight to him. Gennady claimed that he wanted a Mexican-style fight.
He wanted a war, right?
He got it. He brought the fight to Gennady Golovkin. He did well enough in that second fight, as opposed to how he did in the first. The ways when the judges ruled it a decision in favor of Canelo, I couldn't complain.
In my eyes, they're 1-1 with each other. Gennady won the first fight.
Canelo won the second, and this one's the tiebreaker.